안녕하세요, 카드입니다. Hey guys, Cloud here. Finally, I have a webcam. No more nose shots for my laptop. Today we're going to be covering lesson 6 of how to study Korean. We talk about Korean honorifics. We talk a little bit more about conjugating. I'd recommend you guys go back and look at conjugations. Just real quick, there's a table that summarizes everything. Just look at it. Review it for a little bit and then come back here because we're going to be using that, and we're actually going to learn how to make full proper sentences that you can speak, and they won't sound awkward at all. Alright, let's get into it. Vocab, let me zoom in. I keep forgetting to do that. Vocab for this lesson is pretty useful. Shoe, shirt, question, problem. Movie, that's something you're going to hear a lot. Milk, guitar, present, you're going to hear somewhere a lot. Vocab for this lesson is pretty good. 그만하다, 약속하다. It's used a little bit differently, so it's good to actually read what they say about it. That's pretty much it. The adjectives, they're all very useful. And then these guys, used pretty often as well. I think this week's vocab is pretty good. Sometimes I feel like the vocab isn't too useful, but this week's vocab, most of them are pretty useful. I say the only word on this list that I've never actually used in conversation would be hill, because I don't talk about hills very much. Actually, that's a lie. I actually mentioned it once before. Dang. I remember using it before, so maybe wristwatch. I've probably never mentioned this. I've never used this before. But I've definitely mentioned hill before. Okay. Conjugating with honorifics. In lesson 5, you learned how to conjugate verbs and adjectives into the past, present, and future forms. You also learned that those conjugations are hardly ever used in speech. Okay, we already talked about this. What are honorifics? Up to this point, you haven't learned anything about honorifics. From the website at least. You probably heard about it here and there, or I may have mentioned some of it. In Korean, depending on who you're speaking to, you must use different conjugations of the same word. The different conjugations imply respect and politeness to the person you're speaking to. Depending on that person's age and or seniority in relation to yours, you must speak differently to that person. Basically, there's 3 different levels. You're either going to be talking to someone who's your friend, like a close friend, your sibling, or someone who's younger than you. You're going to have one form of speaking to that. You're going to have strangers, people you're not really close with, basically 90% of the population. You're going to have another form. And then you're going to have people who you have to show extra respect to. So your parents, your grandparents, but depending on the family, you might speak to them regularly. Like in the first category. But like if you're speaking to the president, or you're speaking to your boss, or the CEO of a company, you're going to speak a lot different. You're going to speak with like the utmost respect, or honorific form. So there's 3 main forms. You really should focus on the middle one because you're going to use it 90% of situations. Not 90% of the time, but 90% of the situations. Because at least for me, I'd say 95% of the time. Okay, that's kind of high. Well, now that I'm back in the US and not in Korea, 95% of the time, I'm using the least formal one because I only ever talk to my friends that I'm really close with. But that's only one situation with my friends. All the other situations, I probably use the middle form, which we'll get into in just a little bit. Alright, the reason this is so hard for English speakers to understand is that we really don't have anything like this in English. We can make sentences polite by adding please and thank you, but that's just a couple words. For example, if someone says, "Where did you go yesterday?" you could respond, "I went to school yesterday." In English, regardless of if you're speaking to your girlfriend's grandfather or your best friend, it's the same exact sentence. But in Korean, it wouldn't be the same exact sentence. You would conjugate went a little bit differently for someone who's older versus your friend. Unless you are literally just starting to learn Korean, in which case some Koreans would let it slide, you always have to conjugate. Actually, I was just talking about this yesterday, about please. It's so strange. When I'm speaking in Korean, please is embedded into the language. You don't really you don't really say please unless you're begging someone, like, please save me. Even then, no, it'd be like very limited situations. But you know how we tell children, I have nieces and nephews, and I'll tell them, can you take me there, please? Be polite. But in Korean, it's so different. It just depends on the honorific you're using. And it's just different. And you'll get a feel for what I'm talking about. Maybe in 10 lessons, I'll mention this again and see what you guys have to say. Okay, where were we? I can share a really funny experience where this happened to me. I started learning Korean a few months before I moved to Korea. I was not studying very hard or often, so my Korean was extremely basic. When I arrived at the airport in Seoul, I was driven directly, oh, I see what's going to happen, to my school and introduced to my principal immediately. My principal said, I'm happy you're working at my school. And I said, 나도. Remember we said 나 is for informal situations, where 초, you should have said 초도요, is for more formal situations. Instead of being impressed that I knew some Korean words, he looked as if someone had just kidnapped his daughter. Never ever underestimate the importance of honorifics. Actually, I remember one time when I just learned like very basic words. Like I learned 고마워요. So I was at H Mart, and I was talking to a Korean, and then I ended the conversation with like, 고마워요. And she looked at me. She was an older lady. She looked at me. She was like, what? I was like, that doesn't that mean thank you? She's like, yeah, but that's not very formal. I was like, but I thought 고마워 was the informal and 고마워요 was the formal. She was like, you should probably just say 감사합니다. I was like, okay, I guess 감사합니다. But it was interesting, that's for sure. I was like, okay, it's serious. Because we talked and I told her, like, I know like 3 words. I just, decided to learn Korean. But that's my funny story. Keep in mind, okay, he talks about the 3 different types of conjugations. Informal, low, informal, high, and then formal, high. So, I don't really like these terminologies, but we're just going to stick with them. I think it's informal, formal, and then super formal. But, again, formal is not technically formal. There's just no word for it. But we'll stick with informal low, informal high, and formal high. Especially since those are the ones that I used in the recap video on How to Study Korean's YouTube channel. Alright. The names of each of speech form might be different in every source. True. And then plain form, we learned it in the previous lesson. Before you start, remember the rules you learned in lesson 5. When adding something to a word stem, so this is a review. I'm not really going to go over it because I already told you guys to review. Also in the previous lesson, we learned how to make the past tense and the future tense, actually. And he's just talking about how 가다, once you conjugate it, it would become 가 plus a. You would combine it and just be 가. 오다, instead of 오아, it's just 와. You combine them. 배워, 끼 plus 어 becomes 껴. Again, we already talked about this. It's a good review. If you want to read it, you can pause and just look at it. And then 먹다, 먹어, 앉아, or 앉다, 앉아. There are many situations where you will add a, o, or other vowels to stems, which is very true. Okay, now let's get into it, the meat of things. You learned in lesson 5 how to conjugate verbs to the past tense by adding ni은 or 는, 다 to the stem of a word. To review, more review, awesome. 먹다, 먹는다. 배우다, 배운다. There are 3 more conjugations in the present tense. So now, once we take that stem, actually, let's just do it the way he talks about it. Because this is the plain form. It's a little bit different. It's a lot easier with adjectives than verbs. This is verbs. So I may have not mentioned this, but verbs in the present tense. Alright. For informal, low respect, you add a, o, or yo to the verb stem. So, 먹다, you add o, so it becomes 먹어. For 배우다, you add o as well, so it becomes 배워. He has some examples here. So 먹다, 먹어. 보다 becomes 보아, 화. And then 운동하, you add 요 to it, so it becomes 운동해. Again, these rules we've discussed before, so if you don't know why we're adding to 먹다 versus to 보다, look back here. Actually, I think you have to go back to the previous lesson, or you can look at this here for a quick review. But I'm just going to go through them. So the first sentence, 나는, the reason he's using 나 is because this is a low informal form. So whenever you see something like this, you're going to use 나 with it because just to match the forms. Instead of saying 초, which is for the next couple forms. So 나는 항상 저녁에 음식을 먹어. I always eat food in the evening. 나는 나의 선생님을 항상 봐. I always see my teacher. 나는 항상 아침에 운동해. I always exercise in the morning. I don't. Actually, I prefer. I don't like exercise. I like sports, but I do like climbing early in the morning. It's really refreshing. In lesson 1, you were introduced to the function of 에 as a particle, which identifies the location or a time in which something occurs in a sentence. So like here, 아침에 in the morning. So 아침 is morning, 아침에 in the morning. This is just a quick reminder that in addition to other things, attached to part of a sentence to indicate a time. So a place and a time. So evening here. 저녁 and 아침, it's a time, it's not a place. Also notice in the examples above that 항상, which is always, is placed in 2 different places within a sentence. So 항상 봐, always see, and 항상 저녁, always like in the evening, so before evening. So it's flexible with adverbs. You can put them wherever you want. Adjectives, not so much. We'll discuss that in lesson 8. Now, informal hi, it's really simple. You take the informal lo, you add yo at the end. So 먹어 becomes 먹어요, 봐 becomes 봐요, 운동해 becomes 운동해요. Easy. I'm just going to move on because it's honestly super simple. The formal hi, you're going to add 씁니다 or 피읍니다. So for 먹다, because it ends in a consonant, you're going to add the whole 씁니다. But if it doesn't, you're just going to get rid of the 씀 and just add 피읍 and then 니다. So 봅니다 for 보다. So here 봅니다, and then 먹습니다 for 먹다. And then 운동합니다. I feel like it's relatively simple. You're just adding things. You don't have to worry about like which one to add or which one not to add. If you learn this form, if you learn the first form, the low informal, you basically know the informal high because it's just adding yo at the end. And then for this guy, 씁니다 or 니다, pretty straightforward. Especially since we've done a lot of stuff like that, like when conjugating adjectives, 작은 versus 큰, we already kind of experienced that process. Now, past tense. Past tense is honestly pretty easy. We already learned how to make it the plain form. So, 먹었다, you're going to do the same exact thing. You're going to add 어요 or 아요. So, 먹었어, or no, you're going to add 었다, 았다, or 였다, and then you're just going to add a 어 at the end. So it's going to look something like this. So you have to figure out, are you going to use 었다, 았다, or 였다? And then once you figure out which one you're going to use, you're just going to add 어 at the end of it every single time. So 먹었어, and then 들어봤어, and then 운동했어. They're all going to end in 어 because it's past tense. What's different is this guy, which one of these guys you're adding. So, 나는 먹었어, I ate. 나는 들어봤어, I listened. 나는 운동했어, I exercised. Oh, another thing. Here, 저는, right? Because it's more, it's not informal anymore. It's not informal low. Only informal low you use na and in the diary form. Otherwise, you're going to use the 초, which is the bit more formal. Let's go back here. Informal hi, you're going to see 초는 먹었어요. So if you have 요 at the end of your sentence, you're going to say 초. But if you don't, you're going to have 나는 먹었어. Here it's the same exact thing. Going from low informal to high informal is just by adding 요 at the end. This is the form that you're going to use most often. So this is the form that I'd really get comfortable with. I think I mentioned this last time, but I'll mention it again. Before I went to Korea, I'd only spoken Korean with friends who were either my age or younger. I had a couple friends who were older, but they would speak 반말 with me, and I told them, listen, can we just speak in 존댓말? Or can we speak in we would always speak in informal low. I asked them, can we speak in the high informal for a couple months, just so that I get used to it, so I don't go try to buy something or try to talk to someone, order some food, and I'm speaking in fluent, not fluent, but in pretty good Korean. You would expect me to be able to, be polite and be respectful. So definitely, if I were to make a mistake in this, they wouldn't let it slide because I speak Korean too well. I'm not like an absolute beginner. Now for the highest formality, sorry about that. The formal high respect, you take the same thing, so the stem here, the past tense stem, and then you're going to add 씁니다. Pretty easy. You don't even have to worry, is it just the 피읍니다 or is it 씁니다? It's just always 씁니다. So 먹었습니다, 들어봤습니다, 운동했습니다. And the future tense, we learned in lesson 5 how to use 겠다 to make it into the future tense. Is he gonna? Yeah, okay. So basically all you do is you add, you take 먹겠다, which is already conjugated to the future tense, which you did last lesson, so I'm not going to go over it again. Not me. Last lesson. And then for the low informal, you're just going to add 어, which is really easy. So 먹겠어, 배우겠어, 모르겠어. You make it informal high. I'm going to let you guess. You just add 요, 먹겠어요, 배우겠어요. And then to make it the most formal, again, 씁니다 at the end. 먹겠습니다. 잘 먹겠습니다. You probably heard it. And then 배우겠습니다. 모르겠습니다. He has a table here. I personally don't find these tables very useful, but I hear that people really enjoy them, so I do them for people, but or I just tell them to look at this guy because it's quite inclusive. But I don't know. I just prefer to learn one thing and then build on that thing instead of learning all three at the same time and then trying to compare and then trying to think of which one I need to use. I just, can't do that. Adjectives, really easy. Adjectives conjugate exact same way. So, 비싸다 becomes 비싸 in the present, 비쌌어 in the past, and 비싸겠어 in the future. And then you can take, this is the low informal, then you can take it to the highest formality. 비쌌습니다, 비쌉니다, 비싸겠습니다. It's the same exact process. There are some irregular conjugations. Are these guys even irregular? 착하다. 착하다 isn't irregular. Oh, 길다 is irregular. Yes, 길다 is irregular. Because you'll see 깁니다, which is an irregular, which we'll talk about next lesson, which I'm not looking forward to because I personally just learned irregulars just by experiencing them. But I actually think it's smarter to just go over the most common irregulars like 길다, which is pretty common. Especially rir and have so many, that's why I personally felt like for the longest time I was weak when it came to irregular conjugations because I had to know the word for me to know it because I didn't really study it. I just kind of skimmed over the lesson. But if you don't want that, I recommend you actually look at the next lesson. But that's it for this lesson. It was pretty short. I think the only thing you need to really focus on is what we learned in last lesson, which is this guy here. Where is it? Hello? Where are you at? Somewhere here. I know it's here. Yeah. Which one you need to use. 어, 아, or 요. Once you have that figured out, you already got your low informal. Then you add a 요 that becomes the high informal, and then to get it the highest formality, 씁니다 most of the time. Sometimes just 피읍 and 니다. And that's only for the present tense. Past tense, future tense, always 씁니다. I feel like it's pretty simple, but that's because I already know it. What do you guys feel like is confusing? Let me know in the comments, and I'll try to address those in the beginning of next lesson. so that I could, before we talk about irregulars, because we're still talking about conjugation. So let me know what you guys think.